And now we have the uh, the the interesting session, as I call, because it's putting together the culinary world, the Ayurveda world, and the health and nutrition
Recording in
world, right?
progress.
And I see Manoj is missing here, right? He should be coming. Huh? Yeah, we should call him, right? Yeah. So, and we also have we have two chefs here, Chef Harpavan from ITC, and we've been engaging for I think almost 3 years, pre-pandemic almost we've been engaging and meaning to visit each other's laboratories and see how we can work together and understand each other better. So really thankful for him finding the day, and he's been grateful enough to be here almost first person in the morning to come here and sticking around for the whole day. So thanks to you, Chef Harpavan, and Chef Nimish Bhatia, who I just got to know very recently, about a week ago, thanks to the connection made by Chef Manjeet Gill. Is Chef Manjeet Gill online? He's also online. So thanks to him, uh, and uh, and then Prasan here, Prasan Shankar, who's the director of our hospital, Ayurveda hospital here. And I think one forum where we talk about, as we said, our goal here is to look at the whole protein space holistically, right? And so Ayurveda's view on proteins, while the word protein didn't exist then, but there were certainly protein-rich foods there, and would like to understand the perspective from Ayurveda around that, and also how does Ayurveda look at the protein, smart protein space, right? And what are their views in this? So that'll be great. And we have uh, Smita here from Unilever. She leads the nutrition and health space, right, for Unilever R&D. So we'll challenge her with some questions around that space. And Manoj Joshi, who should be around. Manoj uh, looks at the space, similar space. He's the science and technology head in Reliance Consumers, and also head of clinicals as well. This forum has given an interesting opportunity to reconnect with a lot of my ex-colleagues, right? So Smita is an ex-colleague from Unilever. Manoj is just walking in with an ex-colleague from Unilever. We had Suresh Ramamurthy in the earlier panel, Chitra in the earlier panel, Amit in the earlier panel. All of them were ex-colleagues from Unilever. So it's given a nice opportunity to connect with friends, yeah, from previous lives. And so we start the session. I'll Chef Nimish Bhatia and Harpavan and Prasan to come on board. And online we have Chef Manjeet Gill, who I think everybody in the culinary world knows Chef Manjeet. Has Chef Manjeet Gill joined? Not yet. Huh? Yeah. Chef Manjeet is here, so there are two Chef Manjeets, right? Uh, I've labeled them as Chef Manjeet New Zealand. So Chef Manjeet Singh here has joined us from New Zealand all the way. It's getting to be uh, close to past dinner time, I'm guessing, and close to sleeping time. But thank you for joining us, Chef Manjeet. So Chef Manjeet and I connected a few years ago, thanks to Twitter, right, and thanks to Instagram. I'd heard that there was a restaurant which was set up here called Uta, right, which is a Karnataka-themed restaurant. And there was an article I came across where I saw that Chef Manjeet had roamed the villages of Karnataka for a year, gathering and living with various communities in Karnataka and gathering recipes. And so I tweeted hi to him. He responded, and we started connecting with each other. And then I realized that he had set up way before that a restaurant called Herbs and Spices in Indiranagar area. And way back in 98, 99, we had just come back from the US. We were very fond of our steaks and burgers and good quality meats in those days, yeah. And this was the one place in Bangalore which was up there, and serving on a very small scale, little house in Indiranagar area with a board and 12 dishes, written on the board. But outstanding. My favorite restaurant memory, right, that I have is that. So, and then, so when we set up our program here, Chef Manjeet and Chef Abraham Jacob, who can't join today, helped us bespoke almost without charging anything, helped us set up the kitchen. They were here almost every day to make sure we have a quality kitchen set up, and have been guiding us ever since in our smart protein program. So whenever he's in India, he drops by, we get him to taste all our products, and he gives inputs and direction. So thank you so much, Chef Manjeet
Thank
New
you.
Zealand. Yeah.
Thank you, Gurmeet. It's great
Chef
to be here.
Manjeet Gill is, I think everybody in the culinary
Hello.
world. Yeah, hello, Chef Manjeet Gill. Everybody in the culinary world
Yeah.
pretty much knows him.
Hello, good morning,
Yeah.
good afternoon to all.
Yeah. So, I mean, my favorite restaurant in Bukhara was been Bukhara for a long time, right? Growing up in Delhi, that was the one place that if you saved up enough money for a year or 2 years coming from a simple family, but we would save money to go to Bukhara, and that's his brainchild that he seeded in India. And I think everyone in the world, the royalties, the presidents, the prime ministers of every place have kind of visited that restaurant in Delhi. And what I met him for the first time about 3 years ago in a symposium on molecular gastronomy, and I was quite amazed at the breadth of interests that he has. Right, he to integrate science and culinary aspects and Ayurveda aspects, right? So all three that he as an interest, and we are trying to put together a book on Ayurveda and food, and let's see where that goes. And we also have Chef Thiru here, and Manjeet New Zealand connected me with Chef Thiru. Chef Thiru is the principal of the school Vaksha, right? Welcome Group School of Hotel Administration in Manipal University. Actually, I tried meeting up a couple of times. My elder daughter spent 4 years in Manipal University and lived very close to where he's headquartered. And I tried to meet him a couple of times, but COVID days, and so it was kind of difficult. That made it a little difficult. But Chef Thiru, glad to have you here, and we'd love to hear your perspective on training the next generation of chefs and getting them familiar with the smart proteins as we proceed in today's workshop. So,
Good afternoon.
and,
Good afternoon.
and Smita, I introduced Manoj. Yeah. So Manoj heads the science and technology group, or is the head of science and technology in R&D in Reliance Consumers, and also head of clinicals there. And before that, he spent nearly 2 decades in Unilever R&D, leading the clinicals programs and health and nutrition programs, what was called as UFRI in those days. I forget the full name now, what UFRI stood for, but it was like Food and Health Research Institute, Unilever Food and Health Research Institute, maybe one of the first such institutes in a industry setting, and he was looking at the health and nutrition aspect. So thanks, Manoj, for being here. And Smita, in a very similar role in Unilever, health and nutrition for Unilever Foods and Beverages. So thanks everyone for being here. Prasann, that I mentioned off stage, but maybe again on stage, director of the Ayurveda, so Institute of Integrative Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine that we have just round the corner. And we wanted this panel to be a holistic panel, connecting the culinary world with the health and nutrition from a current science aspect and from the Ayurveda. I shouldn't say current science because Ayurveda is also very current science. Yeah, but we wanted to bring these two perspectives on the same platform and see where this takes us. Right. Okay. So thanks everyone. I think if you look at today's world, right, the challenges that I mentioned, that the panel is mentioned in the previous 2 panels as well, right, before the lunch, or on food are humongous, right? Because we are asking food. If you look at 90% of fresh water withdrawals have to do with growing food. 50% of arable land is devoted to growing food. Depending on who you ask, what calculation you believe in, 10 to 30% of the greenhouse gases generated in the world have to do with food. If you're looking at a societal point of view and an Indian perspective, then half of the employment, there are about 450 million jobs in India. 230 to 20 million are in the farm sector, in the agri sector, farm and food sector. Similarly, if you're looking at number of people who are dependent on it, nearly 800 million people are directly involved, or their livelihood, their survival depends on food. So societally, it's a huge impact, right? And then when we look at health, the scientists who are working on the areas of metabolic health, diabetes, cardiovascular health, talk about that a lot of these NCDs, right, non-communicable diseases, have their roots in our dietary pattern. Yes, our genes is one, but the dietary patterns that we have as well. So food has become now almost at the center of these challenges of what we call as health, human health, societal health, and planetary health, right? And therefore, the conversation, any conversation that we need, and we are looking at future, what we do realize today, in today's world, is that what the chefs are cooking today or what they are imagining and creating today become foods of our table tomorrow, right? And so having their perspective, right? I'll kick off with our chef's perspective and probably go to Chef Manjeet Gill. Has he dropped off or? Yeah, Chef Manjeet Gill, right? I mean, Chef, you've been involved even before we realized, right? At least before I realized and grew up to this chef and connection with sustainability and human health, etc. You've been talking about this at global platforms, right? I looked up and
Yes.
you addressed the General Assembly. You were there at the Act Now climate campaign, right? A few years ago. You are part of the Slow Food Network and many more such networks globally. One of your statements, right? Chefs are often role models for many, and so they are capable of encouraging sensitivity to sustainability, right? Is a statement that you made at a Slow Food event a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. So, how do you think that smart proteins contribute to this conversation? And maybe just talking about what all you have done in this space, how do you see chefs play a role,
Yeah.
and what do linking that to smart proteins then? Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to invite me to be part of this panel as a very distinguished panel. Uh, you see, like you said, first thing you said that the Ayurveda is a current science, but I strongly believe it's a future science. We have to understand that, you know, the fundamental principles, some guidelines which are very well defined for the food, and I believe they are absolutely right even for the future. And number two, that the food, we must understand that the food is composed of the five elements of the universe. If we play with food, so we are disturbing the universe. That's what our planet is, and that's what we are talking about, our sustainability, or talking about, the pollution or whatever, or the shortage of water or water polluting or whatever. It's all food, and food makes the difference, and you are what you eat also. So everything is becoming, even our body has become inorganic. So it's a very important, food has to play a very, very important role in this. And incidentally, what I believe that also, that the chefs are in the front of the food. They are the final, where the food or the crops get into the edible food. You cannot eat the crops, you cannot eat the raw things. They need to be cooked. So cooking is very, very important, for the whole system of this. And for the cooking, it needs definitely very sustainable crops, and all these things. The chefs must demand for sustainable crops or the food produced by the right way with the right supplies and all those things. So chefs can, play a very, very important role, and it's a worldwide, in the Eat Forum in Stockholm about the 2019. It was, it was decided, it was universally, everybody agreed that chefs can make the difference. So the chefs must understand this and work responsibly for the future food, for the wellness of the society or the mankind. That's very, very important. So chefs can play very, very important. And these days we see it through all kind of media that how influencer the chefs are playing that role for the food influence of what to eat, what not to eat, and all that. So that's why the chef's role I feel is very, very important. And India, from Indian chefs particularly, or the Indian knowledge, what we have, the skills, particularly for the plant, this smart protein from the plant-based protein, it is in our DNA. It is not a new thing for us. We cook pulses and the legumes in variety of ways. You see, in each legume or each pulse, we take whole, we take split with skin, we take split without skin, we take, even the flour of the pulses also and the legumes. See the way we use them and which we can disseminate that knowledge to the whole world. For them, it's a new thing. We make from the pulses and the lentils, if we take the courses of the Western world from the soup till the sweets, to the desserts, or we can do with the pulses and the legumes. And it is all something very new for the whole world. They are struggling to find out. I think Indian chefs, Indian scientists, Indian knowledge can definitely change the whole world with this and make the world much more healthier.
Thank you, Chef, for that.
Yeah.
I think that vision that India can lead the world because of the heritage that we've had of consuming pulses, and as you mentioned, in so many different ways, right? And together, if we put that heritage with the science and tech, can we lead in that space? So thanks for those encouraging words. Maybe I'll go to the other chef, Manjeet, at New Zealand, right? And maybe bounce this question as to you moved from India to New Zealand a few years ago, right? And so if you can give these two perspectives, right? The smart protein perspective in India and what do you see in New Zealand happening there, and give us a contrast or a similarity. What are the insights from these two worlds that you've gathered? Yeah.
Well, there's, plant protein in New Zealand over the last 4 years. I've seen a massive change, a big build on this. You see a lot of restaurants, you see a lot of cafes that have now turned their menus into completely vegan menus, or majority of the menus now turning more vegan, not even vegetarian, more vegan, in fact. Which is quite surprising. There was a time when about 4 years ago when people used to, come to the restaurant and somebody would say, "Hey, listen, do you have a vegan dish or a vegetarian dish?" And it was rarely available. And you would always find the others on the table, who would probably laugh or scorn at the person who was asking for a vegetarian meal or a vegan meal, is now becoming a lot more acceptable. And you see many restaurants, including the ones that I'm part of, are now having, a separate menu, which is a vegetarian or a vegan menu. A lot of them, of course, have plant-based proteins, in different forms. Now we are getting everything from meatball bases to, plant-based meatballs. And burger patties and whatnot, which is available here. And people are experimenting, they're willing to try. And like Chef Manjeet was mentioning about pulses and grains, I interact with people here on a weekly basis when I do something different from India, food from India, and I get people to sample it on Thursdays over here at the restaurant. I've been doing it now for, I think, about almost 45 weeks now. And I've been able to quite successfully convert a few people who used to not even touch any kind of legume. You give them any kind of dal, they were like, no man, I can't have it. And now they're willing to try, they're willing to eat because they've been repeatedly exposed to it and said, hey, listen, give it a try, give it a go. And they're enjoying it. So then you see that change with supermarkets, for instance, 4 years ago, didn't have a very large shelf space as far as vegetarian or vegan products are concerned, and now that's pretty large. It's a whole section, it's a whole chiller section, which is vegan and vegetarian products. So yeah, there's acceptability is definitely building up. People are becoming a lot more aware. They would like to change. They see themselves, in terms of their health benefits. They feel better than just eating meat all the time, which is what generally happens here. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's always meat. And now they can see the change in them. So there definitely is changing in a very, very big way. You see a lot of new big companies coming up with vegan and vegetarian products, which are available for daily household use. So which is great. You see a massive change for sure, and it's only going to keep increasing.
Thanks. Yeah. Chef Harpavan, right? You are the head of product development and culinary operations at ITC, right? And when I think of that, I see that you are actually sitting in an organization which and doing a job which kind of touches upon, one, of course, you're looking at mass products for mass consumption at one end, and then being in the ITC framework, ITC is also the best restaurants in the world, right? We spoke about Bukhara, for example. So you probably have insights into that end as well. And so, what are the smart protein perspectives that emerge from these two experiences, insights, that you have?
Yeah, so first I'll start from the consumer goods side, because we were the first large conglomerate to launch plant protein products into the market. And somewhere I feel that every issue stems from consumer awareness. So somewhere consumer awareness has to increase a little more. See, abroad we've seen that those countries have evolved, like Chef Manjeet from New Zealand is saying that, suddenly people have turned vegan. Not only vegetarian, but they've turned vegan. We inherently as Indians are vegetarians to quite an extent. Even if we are non-vegetarians, we are not eating non-veg for all 7 days in the week. We eat a lot of vegetarian food, and non-veg comes more like, as a celebratory thing, or even, at intervals or instances. So that ways, I think, what smart proteins, the thing is that when it comes to applications from a consumer goods perspective, we are still now aping the West, where we are trying to coming out with, you will also see in your lab, first thing you've made is those nuggets, chicken nuggets, the burger patty, the sausages, okay. I feel that India, where every 100-kilometer language changes and the food changes, there is so much diversity in food. So India, if you look at a country, if we need to create applications, end applications in terms of using smart proteins, we have a very big repertoire. And as, like Chef Manjeet Gill said that, we should be the first people in the world globally to take smart proteins to another level. So I agree with that in the sense that, yes, you have so many applications. Why are we, when we are doing smart proteins and we are coming out with applications, why are we still aping the Western formats? Why can't we come up with our own formats? And there are some few small startups who have started doing that. For example, I had seen Blue Tribe, and I had seen another one which I think there's one. Yeah. So they are doing chicken chettinad is there, and there are many other applications that are coming out. So from a consumer goods industry, there are two aspects. One, the opportunity. The opportunity is that we can get into those kind of applications. Right. So there can be a plethora of products that from a smart protein perspective, consumer goods industry can come up with. And challenges is consumer awareness. That we need to start, see what happens is that in India, again, because of a large population, any news spreads like fire. Now, for example, right now for smart proteins, the rumor is that they are highly processed. And processed food, now processed food, there is a definition to processed food. What is processed food and why is processed food dangerous or people are not liking processed food? It is because of some additives, preservatives which are added in dosages which are not okay. That processing is bad. But anything, any other processing cannot be classified under this negative processed food definition.
Right.
So there I think that the consumer goods industry has the mantle, should take the mantle of creating consumer awareness to make people understand what is the difference between highly processed, what is wrong with processed, and where do smart proteins come in. They are plant-based, how processed are they? Like we was speaking about extrusion in the morning. Now, a lot of people don't know extrusion. People associate extrusion only to kurkure or only to tede mede, as formats, because those are those products which are very fatty because those are extruded then deep fried. So extrusion is getting a bad name. Okay, so somewhere consumer awareness, and with people, people evolving, there's so much of education coming in, and with all the social media, WhatsApp, there is information that is readily available to all of us in search engines and everywhere. So information should start getting filtered. So all these big institutions should start taking that as a mantle, that the right information should go to the consumer.
Right.
And that is where consumer awareness will come in the right form. And in that right form, people will start adopting themselves to these products, which is smart proteins.
Correct.
Okay, and we need to make them understand that, why proteins are essential as part of our meal. How much protein intake is essential per day. And are we getting that essential protein into our food, in the daily food that we are eating? Maybe we are not, maybe it's an assimilation issue, that we are not being able, our bodies are not being able to assimilate it. So all these awarenesses, so I'll be very, as a chef, I would say that when wine, chocolate, coffee, all these things were very new to India. When they came in, all these companies who brought in wine, chocolate or coffee and all these things started educating. So somewhere any new product or any new technology that comes into the country with this large population, consumer awareness and consumer education should also become part of this thing.
No, thanks. I think very important things that you have touched upon, right? And just to build on that comment on extrusion, and this was 2 days ago, just 2 days ago, there was a group here and we were talking about extrusion. And it's such a common technology that we've been using. I mean, and products, not just food products, things like toothpaste is basically extruded, right? We have the extruder right in our hands. We put a little bit of pressure at one end and we extrude out, right? Because that's what extrusion is. Things coming out of, you put a force and things coming out of a narrow hole, which we call as a die, right? At the end or a die end. So all the soaps that are made in the world are all extruded products, right? They're extruded out and then stamped. It's almost what we call as a metering technology, which is that allows you a very standard amount of flow rate coming with a very specific shape out of a orifice, right? And when you come to foods, murukku, jalebi, you talk about whatnot, all of these are extruded foods. Now, if you wanted to do this at a family scale, you can do it with your hand and with the extruders which come, either you press it or you have the round ones where you build the hydraulic pressure, right? But if you want to do it at an industrial scale, then you require longer ones. And also, if you want to make this task of, at the house end, you have the water and the basin going in together. You make a dough first. You will add your salt and your other masalas and whatever else into a bowl and mix everything else. and then you will put it into your handheld extruder, and you will do the chakki kind of operation and get the extrudeds out and cook your savaiya or murukku, etc. Now, if you think of an industrial scale, what do you require? You will have a doser you'll be feeding in, you'll put a feeder for your besan or your protein powder, you'll put a pump for your water, you'll have another slot for putting in your other spice ingredients and stuff. And that's what a extruder is. Now, if you want all of these things to mix together, what you require is a twin screw extruder. Because what is twin screw extruder? This is a question in the morning also, right? What sets apart the twin screw extruder is that it is an excellent mixer. It blends things because it brings what we physicists call shear, right? And without shear, there is no mixing. Things will not happen. Water will stay at one end, and you will have the basin at the other end. So you have to put a bit of shear, which we do with our hand, right? And you'll see those patterns forming when in the dough when you shear. That's the same thing we are doing in a machine. So twin screw extruder may seem very, hey, this is machine processed. It's actually the same processing that we are doing, but now if you have to do it 1,000 kilograms per hour as opposed to 500 grams per hour, that's you will do it in a machine, and this is going to be way more uniform than anything which is done by hand as well. So that brings in the consistency and quality that most of us expect. So so that was a build on, right, the extruder
No,
part.
and since we are in this forum, and we're talking about smart proteins and taking a culinary take on, since we chefs are there. So I've had the great opportunity of working on both sides. I've worked as a chef in hotels, and I've worked as a chef in the FMCG sector also. And somewhere I realized that if you go to Europe or any of those places, their consumer goods is at a very different level. And why are we not at a very different level? Because somewhere the synergy between food technologists, scientists, and chefs who are the creators is not happening. Somewhere that needs to happen a little more, because as chefs, you are creators and also you are consumer facing. So the consumer understanding that a chef has, very few people have, because when I entered FMCG, the marketing function is supposed to be having another subsection called consumer research. And consumer research is supposed to be very knowledgeable about consumer study, consumer insights. But when I stepped in and when I spoke to them about my experience with consumers, they were taken aback that how can somebody have so much consumer insight? And that was all because as chefs, you are consumer facing. Whether you are in a restaurant, hotel, cafes, you are speaking to the consumer, you are looking at him, you are seeing him eating your food, you see his expressions, you understand his needs. What is he coming for? What kind of consumers are coming? So somewhere when this consumer understanding sits really well with the creator, then creations come out in a very different manner.
Correct. And I mean, if you look at how the kitchen is also evolving and some of the gadgets, right? The things like the Merry Chefs, the Combi ovens, the Vita mixes, the Omega cold press juicers, the Paco jets, we are bringing things which are only possible industrially at mega scale down to a kitchen scale, right? And on the tabletop, and putting them into kitchens and homes now, right? And that is really exploded over the last few years. So very true. The food scientists, the technologists, the chefs, if they come together, and as you said, chefs are the consumer facing, what they understand is consumer taste, and they understand price points, because the amount of math, and what I realized was the chef understand the cost of goods better than the industry people do. Because
price point is equal to acceptability.
Yes,
Very
correct.
straight on in the industry. If you have the right price point, your product is acceptable. Where the price point goes haywire, then...
There's correct. So good. Thanks for those insights. And now, Chef Nimish Bhatia, I mean, I was just looking at your... you are a restaurateur, a culinaire, a gastronomer, a maven, a consultant, and a couple of those I had to search the dictionary to to find out what a maven meant. Yeah, but yeah, you are a very creative soul, right? And you are a consultant to many, right? So one, I wanted to your journey, if you can say a few words, and also about how do you see smart proteins, and what will it take for you to, as a consultant, to to promote smart proteins to the kitchens that you consult with, right? Yeah.
Thank you, firstly, to invite me over here. It's a beautiful place. Whilst I was coming, and I was thinking, where am I going towards all the jungle? And then I see this wonderful thing, and I learned that you're doing so much with plants. Thank you for that. Now, about me, about 35 years, I've been in this, being a chef, and I've always been inspired by chefs. That's where chefs are connected with heart, and that's where they connect various ingredients to form food. Like in English, you need a story, and then you have a paragraph, and you have sentences, and you have words. You have to have right spelling for each word to form that. Similarly, that's what we do, chefs. We connect how does that onion marries the tomato to form a makhani gravy or whatever. And that marries with paneer to give you an accompaniment which you need to get that story out. So basically that's what we do. And we are all inspired and inspired. I think the best chef is Mother Earth. If you see the mango seed is germinated, the best recipe after a few years, it comes back as a mango. So that is where the inspiration is, and for me at least going. So last 35 years been cooking, being chef, about last 7 years plus, and I thought, let me start helping people of whatever I've gained through, and create restaurants, bars, breweries, banqueting, anything which is connected with food. Not only in India, and I do a lot of work in Americas and Europe, and of course here. So that is a bit about me. And coming back here to finding smart proteins, and this is a new way, I think. As we get inspired, so we have to get inspired. For me, a take is this: we find a new ingredient. Today, the competition is between good and good. It is not between good and bad in restaurant. So if restaurant A is good, restaurant B is also good, and restaurant C is also very good. It may be differences. Something is in a 5-star hotel, something is on a street side, but they serve very good food. Now, how can you get better food than good food? That is where it comes is you have to be novel, you have to be experimental, and you have to find new things. And coming this way, whether it is tempeh or whether it is any plant-based food, a chickpea protein or whatever, we are getting a new ingredient for ourselves, and to prove ourselves that we are better than good. So that is what is coming in. As Harpavan said, it is about awareness, and it about granted knowledge to many people. I feel it is get them inspired, show them, and it is the mass. When the mass gets connected to it, that's where you get it. To give you a small example, we were talking about Unilever. Some time back, Maggi came to in India, and we were always eating puri, rice, chapati, paratha, and that's what we were eating. We were not a noodle eating place. Today you see, if you go to any hill station, there is a Maggi point there. You go to any hostel, I'm sure you have a lot of people who they want to eat Maggi. So even in good hotels, they want to use Maggi, saying Maggi, because it is mass related. That's where it gets converted. And the people are inspired. Okay, if I don't get anything, at least that which gets me to something which is convenience. We're talking about this year about millets and year of millets. Till yesterday, we were neglecting millets. We were talking what the hype was created about quinoa or something else. The whole world was talking about quinoa, and it was a bubble. It was curiosity that what is this quinoa? And now when we talk about millets, I'm sure the countries which do not produce millets other than India and some parts of Africa, they are curious about it. So is plant-based protein. Now, there are, I see firstly what came into India was tempeh, or it was a soya based protein which had which has its own aroma, and which was not being liked by many people, and you could create many things, but it was, there was aftertaste. I'm only talking about the perspective of a chef, or a perspective of a restaurateur or a hotelier. So then things came with things which did not have any kind of flavors, but it had textures, but it has also had benefits of health. Now that is what is catching up. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are making it are giving it as an imitation, are giving it as a mimic. They are talking about plant-based meat. They are talking about imitation chicken and imitation mutton. Why? Why you want to, copy it into any other thing? Whilst it has its own identity, and that's the identity which is going to catch up. It is a new ingredient. Form a new ingredient. Sometime back, India never had tomatoes. India never had garlic. India didn't have many vegetables. We didn't mimic it. It became today. You talk about certain regional foods in India. If you talk about Bengal, their life does not start and end without a potato. Potato was never ours. So that's today, which we have inherited and which we've gotten. And the knowledge with people about plant-based protein is very, very limited. So that limited knowledge, probably it has to enhance. And of course, as chefs, we'll have to do a lot of job there. But for us, it is all about being commercial. What we create is not what we eat. We let other people eat. So it has to be very interesting. It has to be very inspiring. It's as somebody would say that if you don't need crutches to walk, how can you fly? It is all about that. So you have to create that inspiration. You have to create that excitement for people that it comes in. And again, it's the same story. It's about heart and brain. The heart says, let it be, all is well. The brain says, all is being well. So that is a little key in between, which has to be pinholed, I guess. And we would see times to come. This ingredient would already be a part of our regular journeys, and then we would be ready to find a new ingredient, a better either health insights or better something which we gain more, which tastes better, and that is a race, and that is on core.
Okay, thank you. I think nice that we need to have a unique identity, right? You don't need to
For sure.
unique ingredient and a unique identity. So, Chef Manjeet Gill, one question that comes to mind, just building on this, is, and taking what Chef Manjeet from New Zealand said, that hey, this kind of plant proteins are now, smart proteins are on the menus of every restaurant now. In India, what will it take for that to happen? Right? What do you think are the bottlenecks? What do you think will make that happen? I mean, soy chap has become popular, at least in Delhi. I was there last month, and it's there on every street. Now, you don't talk just about restaurants, but also the street vendors have suddenly taken to that. What will it take for the smart proteins, right, which is the next generation of soy chap, to become part of every restaurant's menus, right?
I think you're talking about that smart protein is only when you give some fancy shape to some ingredient and make it taste like a burger or nuggets and all that. But every lentil or every pulse or the legume is a smart protein. Now these are the terms, brand names are given to all these things. But they are proteins that we have always consumed. All these things, the variety of legumes and the pulses, as proteins. And we have used them also in different shapes and all the different varieties we have created, as I was saying, with skin, without skin, and all those things. And even we have very well defined, and we do it, that which protein or what kind protein that even the pulse and legume to be used, and how to cook for which kind of a sickness, and if you are sick, if your digestion is not very good, so what kind of a lentil or legume you take, and then it add the cook and with spices, and all that is good for the wellness and for your being. So now the protein, okay, is become a smart protein. We have to give the shape, and so that's the only thing I think we have in our menus, in our Indian style of using the legumes and the protein and the pulses is in there in every menu. And definitely we must uh, educate, and Pawan was saying we have to bring the awareness. There's a lot of education has to come into the for the chefs and even for the consumer also. We have to do it because somewhere in the restaurants and restaurant menus, even in the hotels, I agree that if you go in the vegetarian section, you will find 70% paneer in it, or there are 10-20% of mushrooms, and but there is no other legumes, and the pulses are there other than the dal makhani, and that also we have come to know we reached to the level because of our not having a properly education and aware on these things has become a black lentil and yellow lentil. We have forgotten the names of our lentils. So definitely there's a lot of education required. We have in the menus, but we can, as Chef Bhatia was saying, we have to be now creative because for the today's world, we have to be creative and come with the dishes of these things, having the traditional practice also in that, but created for the modern world with the different, maybe the shapes and the different gravies or the sauces or the, there is a enough margin there for the improvement on this thing and the creativity. And I think the chefs are working on this, but definitely we need much more awareness and which, make the chefs to think and put in the menus.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Yeah. Thank you. And I think that leads us to a question for Chef Thiru, who leads the space of training the next generation of chefs. To Chef Thiru, what are your thoughts of smart proteins and bringing it in the curriculum, getting the exposure to the chefs of tomorrow? How are you playing a role there, and what do you see needs to happen at a larger scale with smart proteins, which we feel, whether they are not there or not, but we feel that these are proteins which will help solve the environmental concerns that we have, the nutritional concerns that we have, the livelihood concerns. So the ask of these proteins is huge, right? And how are you bringing? How do you see the roadmap for training, right?
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, thank you, Dr. Gurmeet, for inviting me to be with this eminent panel members. And good to see, after a long time, Chef Manjeet Singh here. So, good afternoon, Chef. And it's always, pleasure to see you in, whatever, virtual or in person. And, you've been a mentor for so many, and including me. And thank you. Good to see you. And Chef Manjeet from New Zealand, good friend of mine, and Chef Harpavan is my colleague, and senior chef Chef Nimesh Bhatia and other panel members. It's wonderful to see all of you. I'm going to talk in terms of academic perspective, and as you know that I represent Welcome Group Graduate School of Hotel Administration, Manipal. We are part of Manipal Academy of Higher Education. And in 2011, when we rolled out culinary arts program, and we were the only college to integrate science of cooking in the curriculum, because everybody knows, cooking is arts and science. But as an aspiring chef and the students who are pursuing culinary arts, they should know how each and every ingredients behave when you use different temperature, different cooking techniques. So on that note, we were the first college to integrate two, full-fledged subjects. It's with 3 credits. That means 3 + 3, 6 credit subject on science of cooking. And being in multidisciplinary university, and what is unique about Vaksha, because we are, part of health science, technology, arts, and humanities. So, that's a great strength about our institute. So, we have very dedicated entrepreneurial development cell, and also we have dedicated Manipal University incubation centers where you have various startup companies. So, we work with various, other engineering and health sciences as in, multidisciplinary learning environment. So, talking about smart proteins, it's very important when I'm talking about academics, academic sites, the students, the future leaders, and we need to equip them with the requisite knowledge on what is going to be in future food. So, one aspect is we started 13 years back introducing module on science of cooking, how we moved significantly on year on year, talking about how our curriculum delivery, we are closely associated with the local farmers. If you look at that Manipal, we have so many indigenous ingredients, and I think most of you know about the simple example Mattugulla, which is grown only in this South Karnataka. So we had made a lot of efforts to add value-added products in Mattugulla in terms of making sausages and even with the jackfruit. So we, like Chef Arpavan said, that we, as there's a lot of gap between the scientist and the chef. We are the who's inventing the product, but how to commercialize, how to extend the shelf life, those things are put in practice in academic format where we create a product, we take help from the engineering side, how we can commercialize and how we can extend the shelf life with a biotechnology team. So a lot of work, and then even we created a smart protein bar, which is a low cost nutri bar, which won government of government of Karnataka, which conducted innovation challenge for students. So we won that competition 3 years back. So a lot of efforts going in terms of creating awareness for aspiring chef to know what is smart protein, in terms of introducing various models, which is, students must learn. Number one. Number two, working with the other allied departments where you take inputs from them to, when you create a prototype products and how it can be commercialized and it can be technology transfer. So all the effort is going from as an academic institute, and eminent panel members discussed how transformed from the regular. If you look at the taste hierarchy of each and every continent and each and every city, it's differ. For example, even we are part of Karnataka, but if you look at the taste hierarchy of Bangalore, it's different from what we used to in Mangalore or Manipal or Udupi. So I think I'm sure that people travel around the world, and the lots of improvements are happening. And only thing is that, as in whether you are in industry or academics or a researcher, like someone said that the product, the price line is very important, and also creating unique USP for each and every product customer to try it out. From academic side, we are making a lot of efforts and collaborating with the various interdisciplinary as well as the farmers and in building in curriculum. And we are the pioneer in terms of doing everything. And I think I don't know how many colleges are teaching science of cooking. If you go to Culinary Institute of America, if someone wants to pursue diploma in science of cooking today, it will cost you about 1.8 CR. That's the cost of education there. But within India, we are integrated. There are so many things which is students should get benefit, and in terms of society also should get benefit. So that's my take, sir. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I walked into a chef's pantry once and had a peep in there, and I saw, for me sugar was sugar. I have one sugar at home, but he showed me there was liquid sugar for a certain purpose, to go into drinks, etc. Sugar syrup would call. There was fine powdered sugar for certain applications. There was granules for certain applications. Digging holes in cake batters, etc. with sugars, and then there were coarser sugars for applications. So a simple sugar had like 5 different needs, and would have a very specific need for all. And I think I liked what Chef Nimish Bhatia mentioned, that there's a new set of ingredients which are coming, right? And success will be when you walk into a pantry and there are 5 different kind of smart protein ingredients which are there, different sizes, different shapes, different textures, different colors, that are very specific uses, and there is a whole set of dishes which require this specificity. So we've gone ahead in knowledge where we understand each of these pieces and what uniqueness they bring. And so let's see when that future becomes a reality.
Time is not very far.
It's not very far.
It'll come soon.
Great. Yeah. So let's now make a transition from chefmanship and culinary aspects to maybe Prasann. Moving on to the world of Ayurveda, which is kind of the unique perspective of our university as well, right? And so, firstly, thanks for joining this this panel. And a question is, what are the plant protein-rich ingredients? And there's no word like protein, in that era when Ayurveda started. But there's certainly some ingredients. What is the emphasis given? What are those ingredients which Ayurveda says, and what's the emphasis around them? And also then your take on this new ingredient, right, which is coming, which is different from eating pulses, right? Because it is now just like sugar is different from sugar cane, right? And starch is different from eating maize, right? Smart proteins is different from eating pulses, right? So what is your take on this smart protein from an Ayurveda perspective?
Firstly, as you already mentioned, I think protein, there's no word as protein in Ayurveda. And Ayurveda understands protein, food as 6 tastes. So the starting point of nutrition in Ayurveda is 6 tastes, and we talk about madhura, sweet, salt, sour, astringent, pungent, and bitter, and so on. So we are looking at these 6 tastes. So if you look at, the ratio of the six tastes, and when you talk about a balanced diet, the balanced diet is constituted by these 6 tastes. And there's a ratio, so you have the sweet, sour, salt dominating, and then the others, part of the thali. So if you imagine a thali or a banana leaf, then you will have all of these 6 tastes on this thali. And sweet does not mean, of course, rasgulla and gulab jamun alone, but it also means rice, it means wheat, it means pulses, it means meat, it means, so sweet connotes, various other things, not just sweet as a rasgulla. And similarly, sour connotes amla, it connotes raw mango, it connotes, of course, lemon and so on and so forth. So you have these 6 tastes. And if you look at the 6 thalis, you go across the geographies of India, where in the south, and whether it is veg or non-veg, you will see that you have dal, 2-3 types of dal, you have vegetables, you have chutney, which is made of some lentil of some kind. You'll have these ingredients all put together, or if you go to the coast, dal may be replaced by fish, or you may have coconut-based ingredients, and so on and so forth. So put together, they seem to add up to contribute to what we are talking about protein today. So if you juxtapose, and also if you look at food vargas, because there are food different groups of foods. We have shuka dhanya, that is the cereals. We have shimbi. So we have 12 different vargas in which we have cereals, we have pulses, we have milk, we have aquatics, so fish and so on. We have ikshu, the sugars. We have so they are different things. So if you have to juxtapose protein per se towards to what we have in Ayurveda, then we can, everything has protein, so to say, but the meats, the cereals to some extent, of course, and the lentils. So these are the primary, and the milk products, the aquatics. So these are the 5 primary sources of protein, so to say. And of course, the others have some amount of protein. So that is, in a sense, what we are talking about in terms of protein. And these proteins, so if you give one, let me give you one example. So there's a sutra that says, Mamsam mamsena vardhate. That is similar builds similar. So meat builds meat. So if there is cachexia, there is muscle wasting, there is sarcolemma, then we provide something similar. And it's not that only meat is recommended. So meat, for example, aja, or the meat of goat, it's said to be one of the best sharira dhatu samanya. It is something that is similar to the human body, and you can give meat in this form. But also you can give other vegetarian sources. For example, soup of lentils. Black gram is also said to be very useful in the same way. So you can design foods based on the requirement and the need of the individual. So you're looking at specific requirements and how to design it. So you have both these aspects in terms of how to provide protein in the system. So that's one part of it. Also, if you just take the example of legume, I think Chef Gil Saab was pointing to this. It was interesting, and Bhatia sir also, that if you were to make a sort of scale of lentil, you have, say, a simple preparation of the lentil. So we say there's a preparation called manda, which is 1 part of the grain and 14 parts of water. And so here you have the lightest form of it, and then you can build upon this and you can make it more gruel-like. You can add ingredients to, to spice it up. So you have moong dal, you cook the moong dal, you add to it the pomegranate juice, you can add ginger to it, you can have piper longan to it, and so on. So in the context of, say, shosh or tuberculosis, there is one description which says horse gram, protein, moong dal, ginger, piper longum, as well as amla and pomegranate. This is all made into a soup of some kind and provided. So it is something that improves digestion, at the same time provides you energy as well as protein. And so this is one example. So you have something like moong dal chila, you have tikkis, you have, so many ingredients with the moong dal that you can make. So from lightest section to the heaviest section. So this is one way of looking at it, and I think in some sense, we as Ayurvedic doctors are somewhat obsessed with metabolic health or Agni. Agni, or how well you digest something, is something that is taken extremely seriously. And it is sort of an obsession for, we will go to any extent to ensure that you don't have indigestion, and therefore, give our diet according to, that sort of thought process. So that's the other part of it. With regard to your question on smart proteins, I mean, this is something new, and we have not really thought about it too much, but just take the example of, say, soya. I mean, soya is something that's in India, at least right now, quite is something that's going on quite a bit. And while there are so many things about soya which are negative, there's so many things about soya that are positive on soya. If you take the Far East traditions of use of soya, like in Japan, where we have natto, we have the fermented forms of soya, and they have you've been using soya for centuries, and they seem to be doing well with it. And so now you have this newer form of soya chap. But if you look at soya chap per se, I'm not sure what it constitutes, but I think there's quite a bit of maida in it. And so one should know, as a user, so I'm a doctor, so I need to inform patients appropriately. So if there's so much of maida in it, so it's not the best thing to, so maybe designing these proteins with the principle of the fact that it is nutritious as well as healthy is also important, as also a consumer perspective. So I think that's also something that's important.
Yeah. Thanks for that perspective, and I think that just builds on for our health and nutrition, right, scientists here. And so, Smita, you look at health and nutrition from a Unilever perspective, and Unilever has invested quite a bit in, globally at least, right, in the plant protein sector, with the Vegetarian Butcher, a big company. And I was reading last week, prepping for this session, and they've set target of 1.5 billion sales coming from plant-based sector. So, your views around this sector, and how does it meet the nutrition health needs of India going forward, right? In the Indian context, yes. Smart protein Indian context, yeah.
Am I audible? Yeah. So good afternoon all, and thank you, Gurmeet, for having me in the panel here. The topic is quite a bit of interest to all, and of course curious minds like us want to know more and understand it better as well. So with that, if you have read the Eat Lancet Commission report, it says that if people shift towards plant-based diet largely, we would probably be decreasing the emissions by about 80%. So meat and dairy alternatives and vegetables, of course, is very good for the environment. And plant-based diets is very good for the environment, in addition to being very good for human health as well. So if you look at plant-based diet in general, it is low on calorie, comparatively it is lower on calories, it is low on saturated fat, but it is high on the desirables like the fiber and the unsaturated fats. Also, studies have shown that, you know, in the long term, plant-based diets bring down the risk of diseases like cardiovascular health, cardiovascular issues, certain cancers, and also type 2 diabetes. So this is something that has been observed for some time now. And if you look at the nutritional needs of a human being, a plant-based diet can supply all the nutrients that are required by the human body to function well. But with all, like it goes with all the other diets, this also requires a bit of planning. Certainly, you know, there is a wide belief that the quality of the protein is not optimal when it comes to plant proteins. And the absorption or the source of nutrients, micronutrients like zinc, like iron, iodine, vitamin B12, this is also in a way a challenge for us to absorb from a plant-based diet. But when I take protein as an example right now, in case of protein, a well-planned diet will definitely help, even if when it is plant-based. Now, what is the basis for this statement that I make? It has the protein that we intake has to come from diverse sources, and if it comes from diverse sources, the required nutrients, and in this case the essential amino acids, that is the key you know, for calling a protein whether it is optimal quality or not, is taken care of because it is coming from different sources, and different proteins from different sources will cover for all the essential amino acids that are required by us. And when it comes to micronutrients, like the micronutrients I just talked about, again, you know, the plan is to have a diverse diet, and at times it is also the way a particular traditional cooking or traditional suggestions are there. Say, for example, vitamin C, intake of vitamin C along with our diet so that our absorption of iron and zinc is better. Now, vitamin C is simply but a lemon juice maybe. Or it could also be through fortification, like the industry contributes. And we have seen many examples where, you know, the plant alternatives that we have micronutrient fortification already done with that end product. Now, if I have to come to Unilever and, you know, to better reflect on our plant strategy and also the sustainability agenda, we have committed, you know, to gain 1.5 billion euros of sales from plant-based products. And this is in the category where traditionally animal sources of protein or, you know, base ingredients are used. This is a global target that we have, or the global goal that we have. And collectively, we are working towards that. And why do I say that? We have a lot of collaborations where we are looking at how we can look for alternative sources of proteins. Like in the morning, in some of the panels, I did hear people talk about how we need to look at more, you know, sources of protein, not just limit ourselves to soy, wheat, and pea. So there are, you know, there is work happening in Europe by Unilever, where we have partnered with an organization called Enough, and another organization called Algenuity, where we are looking for diverse protein, like the fungi protein or the algae protein as well. We are also partnering with Wageningen University, where we are looking at how the basics of science of texturing and how, you know, we can use protein, fat, flavor in combination to bring the right texture so that it is appealing to consumers as well. This is a project called Plant Meat Matters. And then there is another project which where we are looking at how protein, you know, the alternate protein can be made better at sensorials, better digestibility, and also how it can be made nutritionally more relevant. And how do consumers accept this in the long run? In addition to this, we are also working on the long-term health impact of these alternatives that we have in comparison to the animal meats that are there. Unilever is committed towards a lot of research in this area, and a lot of work is happening across the globe. In India, if I have to come to India, the portfolio that we have is largely vegetarian. About 95% of our products sit in the vegetarian domain. Of course, there are products like ice cream where we use dairy ingredients. But if you generally look at it, it is largely vegetarian by the Indian context. And of course, we are looking at the needs of the consumer, Indian consumers, and looking at where we should probably act. And when the time is right, of course, the organization will jump in with the learning that we have had at the global level and use it to adapt and adopt for the Indian consumers as we need it.
Cool. Thank you. I think those words were very encouraging, very exciting. That $1.5 billion almost रोंगटे खड़े हो जाते हैं सुन के कि with excitement that that we are headed. Yeah, I know per annum, right? Yeah, so that's a humongous task. Great that a company takes that challenge, and as per the Lancet report, that can create a huge impact. Offering these choices to consumers, and if consumers pick them up, yeah, it can create a huge. So thanks, Manoj. I've known you for a long time, and I don't know anybody else in my circle, at least, yeah, who has, led health platforms, both Unilever, now leading at Reliance, but also, worked in science in Israel, in Japan, in Canada, in Europe. So you have a really global perspective on this area of health, wellness, nutrition. And my question to you is not from where you work, but as a scientist, right? And be critical of this area as well. So your honest opinion about how do you think, firstly, this importance of dense proteins we are talking about, right? Today, as a scientist, what are the pros, the cons that you see? And also, what clinicals would you wish for to happen to build the science in this area and the strength in this area, right? That plant-based proteins, smart proteins can replace, say, meat proteins.
Yeah, thank you, Gurmeet, first of all, for the opportunity, wonderful opportunity. You compensated for my stupidity by all those adjectives.
Yeah.
And I think first I have to give thank to Gil sir. Such a luminaries of chefs I'm sitting with. 2 decades of work in Unilever, now in Reliance. Never had an opportunity to be as close to chefs as you. I earn my livelihood from that. But you know what, in the name of nutrition, what all we used to get is the sheet, not the product. And we need to defend the sheet because that's why the nutritionists come in. The food is already prepared, chef already has done his wonderful job, and then the nutritionists come into picture. And me and Smita, I'm putting into role. And then you put us a little bit in a tougher zone, Gurmeet, because when I go to consumer, I said, look, here is the product, here is the smart protein. I think first suspicion she is going to put me on, saying, look, tell me what you are putting there, I will tell you whether this is smart or not. Yeah, so I think, I'm not taking anything away from the word, it's a great word. But I think we have worked with consumer industry, consumer is God. Yes, and at the end of it, education is important. But I think knowing where our consumer is a mother, yeah, invariably comes learn where is she coming from is a very, 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 very critical point. I started my nutrition journey with a man, Chauvin. He was the heading the Unilever's Food Research Institute. That time it used to be called as health, food and health. And I can see over the time, sir, that health is actually now not coming in the nomenclature of food industries. Yeah. So with this, coming to some of the pointers which you mentioned, Gurmeet, I think probably it is very important to keep science in the context. It doesn't play out in short run. In short run, science, I know, comes out as a bit of a dampener, but in long run, it works good. One, we as a community of scientists, when I call as nutritionists, have not done, we are a sort of breed in ourselves. People always, when you put something, there's, oh, yeah, now you are into this. Last year you were into that. Now X are good, X are bad. So we oscillate. But our only tool is science. So we learn from what we get from the literature. So I think from me, the most motivating factor about this conference is you are defining proteins. Because when we nutritionally looked at the clinical studies in this world, our biggest issue, biggest challenge is carbohydrates are a bit better, fats are better, but it's the protein we get the biggest difficulty with. We ask our volunteers, what do you eat? He says, I am a vegetarian, but then you realize he's sometimes non-veg as well. And the non-veg is not as non-veg as he mentions. A lot of subjective definition, what do you eat? I eat chicken, how much portion size, this and that. And you know what, it finally then sort of comes out in our observational studies or interventional studies. It comes out in our outcomes. Because our portions are not very defined. Yeah. So I think for me, one hope I see of this program is you bring out defined offerings. Yeah. A defined ingredient brings out a defined offering. A defined offering helps us to measure the outcome in a much more precise manner, so the credibility of the research goes up. One. Second thing is, yes, we are very excited about in this journey, but remember we have SSI to fight on, we have regulatory bodies to fight on, and they would look at what evidence we have in our offering. Yeah. Yes, we will define it. We will generate data, and I think we will become convincing in that way. Yeah. The third line of caution is we are imaginative and we are creative, which is great for food industry. But remember, for foods, it's not that great in use. The more traditional you are, better you are. And the moment you get a little bit out of the mainstreams, you have a bit of a struggle with FSSAI, with novel food and so many things. There, I think probably looking at bioequivalence, I think Prashun is here. We have looked at in our past industries a lot from traditional recipes, traditional medicines, chef, a great source of inspiration. I think looking at that, and then trying to kind of look at what is the equivalence model we come out with our smart proteins. Yeah, whatever it may be, we will define it. Yeah, but we will come out. I think that knowledge will be very, very critical when we finally go to the market. Yeah. And then, of course, the last point I want to touch upon, and many people touched it, about RDA. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing to look at. Most probably protein would redefine RDA as you look into the West today. Yeah. Because people are realizing that depending on your metabolic needs, you require different amount of proteins. Yeah. We are getting inspired by that debate, and I think there is a little bit of probably fact check here. The fact check is there's a lot of myths around protein here. One myth is that plant proteins are inadequate, not enough, and I think that we need to kind of really look at, because you look at it from a biosciences perspective, that is, any living organism is empowered to code 20 amino acid by their genetic code. So do plant. Plants are a great source of branch amino acid chain fatty amino acids, valine, leucine, and they are lesser source of aromatic amino acids. But no Indian eats only one kind of legume or one kind of grain. Everyone has a mixed platter. So basically what I'm saying is this inadequacy of vegetarian protein to give you your protein RDA is probably need to be looked at closely. Yeah. What I have looked at it, I don't see any reason that is inadequate. It is qualitatively potentially inferior to some of the animal proteins or probably soy protein or egg protein. I think that gap we need to bridge in. That gap we need to bridge in. But remember, this is only looking at the nutritional part of it. Protein also have a lot of functional part, because anybody who has gone into protein as in their dietary cycle, you will realize that it has a lot of role to satiety. Yeah, you increase your protein intake and you suddenly realize your food intake goes down, and they're associated with the mood level and so on. I'm not going into that. And you know, it has gone down to a level that lysine does this and leucine does that and so on. So there are a lot of hormonal influences by amino acids and the proteins. I think somewhere, I'm not saying now, probably immediately, but somewhere we need to look at whether we are bringing that into the purview of a smart protein or not, because in long run, those will be the key sort of functionality as well as we build on them. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj, for that science perspective. And from whatever you said, I see actually a number of innovation ideas actually built into it, backed by clinicals. But I think a lot of questions in my mind, I'm sure with the audience as well. But we need to move on to the next panel. So I'll thank everybody. Chef Manjeet Gill for joining us, Chef Manjeet from New Zealand, Chef Thiru, Chef Harpavan, Chef Nimish Bhatia, Prasann, Smita, Manoj. Thanks a lot for that insightful discussion and that wide-spanning discussion, right? Thanks a lot. And I certainly want to stay connected with the chef community and see how we can, the academics and the chef community come together for menus of change, as we call it, right? And create greater impact in society. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab.
Yeah.
And thank you to each panel. It's a very enlightening panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gurmeet. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, chef. Yeah. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thiru. So we come to our, thank you for being a patient audience and thank you for bearing with me. Sorry to, that you have to hear my voice for 6 hours. Yeah. But we come to our last panel. We are a little delayed, but we had kept enough buffer time for us. But I'm not sure the panelists who are going to join in the next session had a buffer time. But we have Bharani Prasad here. Maybe if you join on the panel. He's director of SciSure Nutrition, and looking at proteins for masses, right? So a company which is seeded by an NGO and trying to see how protein reaches every Indian's plate. We have 3 panelists online as well. We have Sandeep Sabharwal, who leads, he's founder of, he's been in the NGO world for decades and has recently founded Sangha Chadavam Foundation, is connected with the youth of India and trying to create rural entrepreneurship models. I think thousands of organizations, lakhs of youth, part of his connection. Then we have, do we have Neetu Ben and Devi Prasad also online? Yeah. So we have Devi Prasad ji online with us and Neetu Ben, both of them working at the grassroots level, right, in organizations at the grassroots level, very well connected with rural India and trying to create transformations through these networks. Neetu Benji with the founder of Sajivan Rajkot, working in seeding the whole organic revolution in India. And Devi Prasad ji is the CEO of SCPL and again a grassroots level organization. So I think we move straight into, so thank you for being here. And we move straight into this discussion. No, and the key topic here is that uh, we've heard about the smart protein and we've heard about twin screw extruders, new ingredients, and we've heard the government, the DBT, the DST, their views, how they feel this sector is growing, and they feel that it will grow by leaps and bounds, right? And they are investing heavily from the government of India perspective. And what we have on the table today is how inclusive. How do we ensure that this sector as it grows is inclusive, right? How can a wide spectrum of society participate in this smart protein story, right? And if you look at from a food systems perspective, we have the growers at one end of plant proteins, if it's going to come from plants. There are the growers at one end, and then there are the consumers at the other end, right? And the consumers right to every Indian's plate, as we said, right? So how do we go from this end to end? And I think in that space, to maybe Neetu Benji, I'll begin with you. You are here because you work at the growers end with the organic revolution. And I think just telling us very briefly about the work that you do so the audience becomes familiar. And then what are your ideas on how do we grow more legumes, lentils, the protein-rich plants while keeping plant diversity? I mean, it shouldn't end up like what we are talking about today, wheat and rice, that only 2 or 3 varieties which populate one whole state, right? And how do we ensure adequate compensation for the growers, right, as we go along this journey? So over to you, Neetu Benji. Yeah.
जी नमस्ते सर। सबसे पहले तो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आपने मुझे एक प्रोटीन फोरम पे बोलने का मौका दिया। सबसे पहले वर्क के बारे में आपने पूछा तो मैं गुजरात से हूँ और गुजरात में सौराष्ट्र में राजकोट डिस्ट्रिक्ट में से मैं आ रही हूँ और मेरा सजीवन फाउंडेशन करके एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो 50,000 फार्मर के साथ जुड़ा है और हम ऑर्गेनिक सर्टिफिकेशन, कार्बन क्रेडिट और फॉरेस्ट्री काफी सारे अलग अलग विषय पे हम काम करते हैं और हम गवर्नमेंट ऑफ गुजरात की CPVO है और 25 FPSC हमारे पास है। तो एंड टू एंड जो सॉल्यूशन की बात एग्रीकल्चर में हम करते हैं उसी में पूरा सर्कल चैनल सजीवन फार्मर के साथ काम कर रहा है। दूसरी बात रही प्रोटीन की, तो मेरे गुरु जी रहे जिनको मुझे याद करना अभी बहुत अच्छा लगेगा, दीपक भाई सचदे, जो अमृत कृषि करके उनका नेचुको फार्मिंग करके एक कंसेप्ट था और मैं संदीप भाई एक ही गुरु से खेती में तैयार हुए हैं। तो वो जो खेती में बात कर रहे थे वो फॉरेस्ट का मिमिक्री, मतलब जंगल में जो कोई चीज उगती है तो न्यूट्रिशियस क्यों होती है, क्योंकि उसमें कोई केमिकल नहीं पड़ता, उनके अंदर जो बायोडिग्रेडेबल जो पत्ते होते हैं ज्यादा गिरते हैं, पशु पक्षियों का जो मलमूत्र है वगैरह गिरता है। तो जो फॉरेस्ट्री की जो प्रोसेस है मिट्टी की जो अपने आप होती है, प्रकृति को मिट्टी बनाने में 1 इंच मिट्टी बनाने में 100 साल से 500 साल लगते हैं। वही मिट्टी का जो हमको नॉलेज दिया जो दीपक दादा ने, मेरे गुरुजी ने, तो वो मिट्टी 140 दिन में हम कैसे बनाए फार्म पे, वो भी गौमूत्र, गुड़ और गोबर और अपने बायोमास से बनता है। तो न्यूट्रिशन कैसे आता है वो प्रैक्टिस हमने बहुत अच्छे से सीखा और फार्मर को सिखा रहे। और अभी जो हम काम कर रहे हो ट्राइबल बेल्ट, जो डेडियापाला बोलो, नेत्रंग बोलो, भरूच के आसपास का विस्तार बोलो, छोटा उदयपुर और डांग, तो इटसेल्फ ये पूरा एरिया वैसे नेचुरली था, उसमें प्रैक्टिस का कुछ ज्यादा इन्वॉल्वमेंट हुआ। उसके साथ साथ प्राइस कैसे मिले फार्मर को, तो न्यूट्रिशन की वजह से प्राइस मिलते हैं और दूसरा जो उनका NPOP जो अपेडा से काफी सारी CB पूरे देश में 23 के आसपास CB है, उसमें से गोपका करके एक गुजरात की सर्टिफाइड बॉडी है, उसमें फार्मर को रजिस्टर करके 1 साल, 2 साल, 3 साल, चौथे साल से वो NOP सर्टिफिकेशन में आते हैं। तो एक तो न्यूट्रिशन होने की वजह से फार्मर को प्राइज मिलता है, दूसरा सर्टिफिकेशन होने की वजह से प्राइज मिलता है। तो इस सर्टिफिकेशन का जो प्रोसेस है वो फार्मर खुद अकेला नहीं कर पाता, उनको काफी सारी जो डॉक्यूमेंट पार्ट की जरूरत पड़ती है। तो सजीवन पूरा उनका रजिस्टर करना, उनको क्लस्टर बनाना, उनका एप्लीकेशन करना, फिर आगे उनका डॉक्यूमेंट करके CB में सबमिट करना, पूरा का पूरा प्रोसेस जो 3-4 महीने तक प्रोसेस चलता है, उसके बाद उनका सर्टिफिकेशन आता है। तो NPOP स्टैंडर्ड के ऊपर उनको अच्छा दालों में प्राइज मिलता है।
Thank you, Neetu Benji. So,
जी
I think that was fascinating to to hear that a process जो 100 साल से 500 साल, from 100 years to 500 years, no, that it takes to build 1 inch of soil, that we can do in 150 दिनों में almost, no, 150 days we can kind of do that. So that's really fascinating to hear and intriguing to hear. And that's certainly one way to increase the productivity of probably legumes, because they grow on marginal lands, dry lands, etc. So वहाँ पे ज़्यादा impact इसका हो सकता है. So that's one question to Devi Prasad ji now. कि is Devi Prasad there? No, he's dropped off, right? But maybe then to Sandeep. Sandeep, since you work with a lot of rural entrepreneurs, right? I forget the number, but I mean it was a massive number when I heard you talk about. So maybe a little bit about your organization, what you're trying to do, and then connecting it with what are low-hanging opportunities, no, in this space from a rural entrepreneurship model. How would you? Are there any ideas that pop in your mind, having heard Neetu Benji now, as to how do the farmers participate in this end? Yeah, and what are the rural models, yeah, that you could think of? Yeah.
I think I'm audible now.
Yes, you are, Sandeep.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thanks to our audience here, because this is an area of interest. I'll just take 2 minutes to draw a little background, because I'm now in the beginning of 34th year of my career, 33 years gone now, and very passionate, patriotic individuals like all of us are, and wanting to look at a country which is. So in 2013, I had heard and read that we were 43rd ranked in the Global Hunger Index of 104 countries evaluated. In 2018, it became 68th. The ranking further deteriorated, actually. Rather than, so we were growing volumes of foods, but at the same time, the Global Hunger Index ranking of the country was deteriorated further. And then further, I heard the recent one was 104th ranked in an overall assessment of about 134 countries. So what's happening? Why all these volumes of foods are not reaching out to people who need to be eating some qualitative food and all of them, number one. On the other side, in 2013, India used to grow almost, we imported that year about 22.8 million metric ton of pulses. And last year we imported close to only 10% of that. That means pulses and legumes, because of National Pulse Mission and all these things are happening. They are happening for real, and availability, local production are growing. Yeah. Like Neetu Ben has already told you that we come from the same school of farming methodology called Nature-Eco, something which is consistent with nature and ecology. So there I had read in 2010, we were preparing for a national summit like this for food security issues in rain-fed farming areas of the country, because we are the largest rain-fed farms in the world. And even today when I'm talking to you, 75 million hectare of land is rain-fed. So we saw that 100%, almost 100% of the legumes come from rain-fed farming areas. And how do you, so you started by asking me a question about which are the low-hanging fruits in terms of entrepreneurship, because my area is agriculture entrepreneurship. So I would say, let's begin with one fact, that in 2010, the data read from the Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperation, it read that India has 52% that year, and by their average, 52% of legume seeds only germinate in the whole of country. We started calculating, backward calculation, that if we increase 10% or 20% more germination in the pulse seeds itself, what is going to happen to this country? And we saw that 2 to 3% higher germination in any crop of legume in the country that year in 2010-11 would have added $43 million more to agriculture economy. Why? Because it would have stopped, it would have added more crop germination in the same farm, the same season would have utilized for more production. And because of having more production, so the first entrepreneurship opportunity that sounded to us that year itself was, how do we help these farmers increase the germination percentage of all the legume crops that we are sowing there? Thereby we brought about, if I am allowed to make a small slide presentation here, I'd like to rather show you something. And so we figured out a way of creating seed balls, because seed balls today in the larger world, the people who are associated with farming in some way or other. They understand that there are seed balls in which the overall composition is such that it helps facilitates the germination of seed better. So that whole idea had happened about 15 years ago, 13 years ago, and that's all. So that was one part of it. I would say that major part of, I will give you a small example from, there is a village, there is a place called Agar. It has now been declared as a separate district. About 15 years ago, while working with Reliance Foundation, we stepped into this highly drought-prone area called Agar, and we saw that there's a beautiful women's self-help group which makes a legume-driven, very high-protein laddu, which they were very keen of introducing it as a local diet to the local midday meal programs. So we approached the local district deputy commissioner, the district collector, and she happened to be a young woman IAS officer only, and she agreed. Why not? So we did all the quality testing things and everything, and then it was agreed upon that out of a semi-automatic process of maintaining the same quality as per the norms of the government of compliances, quality compliances are offered, those women will begin, that women self-help group will begin to supply those many legume-based high-protein laddus in the midday meals. 3 times a week they will be given that, along with jaggery or something like that. Later on, after maybe 4 or 5 years, I happened to be going back to the same district again. That time it was not a district. Such was the condition of that place that I don't know what happens because they have declared it as a district. There's not a single hotel where you can put up for a whole night. Not a single dharamshala hotel, nothing. So I had a friend who was posted there in a bank. So I used to live. And then to my surprise, pleasant surprise, I found that that women's self-help group had grown so big that they used to have almost 28 to 30 lakh rupees worth of turnover of making the same leguminous high protein laddus supplied to not only one school now, but varieties of schools across the district. That was the support. So what happened in 4 years? And then we started asking questions to the school children also, and we saw the people, the children who were younger about 5 years ago, and now they had grown a taller, better, bigger, and healthier. We also asked their mothers, also asked their people. The parents were very happy, the children were very happy. They had obviously grown much better, and their immunity had raised. This is coming from a very severely drought-struck area in the country in Western MP on the borders of Rajasthan. That's what I saw about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We asked them what happened, why, how come this thing has taken place. So they're so appreciative of the whole ecosystem. Now talking about low-hanging fruits for entrepreneurship development, super proteins, legumes, vegetables, do we have a connectivity here? I would say anything would requiring an ecosystem approach today. Thanks to friends like you and many other incubation centers in the country, that we understand that it's an ecosystem approach of planning which will be able to give rise to these kind of enterprises. I'll stop there because an ecosystem approach obviously has different players, different stakeholders, including government, R&D. Entrepreneurs have to come. They must be given the charm that, look, this is a sunrise sector, you must come. But alone entrepreneurs coming in would not make it happen. We need to give them so many supportive factors around them. And that's the ecosystem approach that we need to adopt here also. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think we'll come back to you to that point. Yeah. But first, I wanted to bring in Bharani Prasad into the conversation. So you come from an organization that is trying to see how do we put what the nutritionists are saying in their curriculum, in their textbooks, what science is saying in the papers, and how do you put it on the plate, right? So tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and how do you, what challenges you see when it comes to putting the right proteins on the plate, and then maybe smart proteins, on the plate, right? Yeah.
Firstly, thanks a lot for the opportunity, and it's a privilege to be a part of this panel. And our work started just on nutrition, just started about 6-7 years ago, when we run basically charitable hospital, public charitable hospitals across the country, where we treat children with congenital heart diseases. So India is like the capital of congenital heart disease. 3 or 4 lakh children born with a hole in the heart every year, and hardly about 30 or 40,000 surgeries happen. Now rest of them we don't know the data. And we saw in our hospitals, where we were doing about 25 free surgeries every day, that most of them almost 95-96% of the children who come to our hospitals are from the rural and poorer backgrounds, economically poor. Now that got us to a question: okay, why is the disease with the poor and not the rich? Now, one of the things that led us to was maternal nutrition, adolescent nutrition. So that could possibly be one of the reasons why there are so many children being born in this country with a heart disease. Then it became more and more not I wouldn't say conclusive, but it gave us enough indications that nutrition plays a very, very important role in this aspect. So that's when we launched a outreach program as part of our hospitals to see if we can do something with these mothers, taking care of these adolescent girls and mothers, and ensuring that they get enough nutrition to ensure the child is born healthy. Now that's when we began a small program right here in the outskirts of Bangalore in Chikbalapur district. And we saw, we adopted about 15 government PHCs. We were getting in obstetricians from Bangalore to see if they could be of some value addition to these women. And we were taken aback. Hardly 60 kilometers from here, women are into 6th month of pregnancy and they're hardly 35-36 kgs. And that got us, and that's when we started thinking on nutrition part. Can we do something there? Now we had various discussions. Can we give them ration? Can we give them high protein like dals and eggs and things like that? But we all know Indian mothers as they are. They'll take the ration, cook it at their homes, feed everyone in the family, and eat themselves. They'll eat last, being mothers. So that was the seed through which we thought, why not we create something exclusive for these women? And we said, if something consumed exclusively by the pregnant women. And we even went on to say, if men are going to consume it, they have high chances of becoming pregnant. That was in a lighter this thing. But that was the thought. And it slowly turned into a product. So the whole idea was, there are these Ensures, there are these Protein X, there is so many other products which you just go and pay 600 rupees in the open market and buy it. Now, can the rural women, now there's a need for this kind of a product because we know that what they're eating at homes is not supplementing enough for their for the process of giving birth. Now, we said, why can't we bridge this gap of what their urban counterparts have in the cities? Can these women have access to? The thought was simple. Can these women, not even affordable, can we make this accessible? So what we did as a trust was that we worked with various companies and nutraceutical companies, and we pitched this case, and they said, we'll give this formula and all of that. And it turned out to be that at about 25% of the MRP what they were selling at, we were able to get that product. And we saw, let's see if these products actually have an impact on these women. And we started giving these products for 6 months. So obviously a high protein product, which had about 25% protein in the product. And they started taking twice a day. And it turned out that, the HB levels increased, and it was documented. Two of my colleagues are here. So it was documented, and it was a success story. Now maternal mortality in the district came down, and they all attributed to our thing. Now that got us to serious thinking. Yes, there is a need, not just for maternal malnutrition. There's a need for diabetes. Today, India is like the world's capital of diabetes. 10 crore diabetes and about 30 crore in pre-diabetes. Can all of them afford Ensure diabetes or some other brand? It's difficult. So that's when we thought, let's create a model on making affordable, good quality nutritional supplements. And the other word which we wanted to kind of consciously ensure was aspirational. It should be an aspirational brand. It cannot just be you cannot take the millets back to the village and tell them that if you take this you're malnutrition. They're not going to take it. So that's how. So today where we stand is the program has expanded rapidly on the pregnant women side. We have built a state-of-the-art hospital here close by, and at around the same time, our school meal programs. So we all know that midday meals are being given to government school children, but the most important meal for any child is the breakfast. So there was the missing link there. So government came up with a request saying that we are already we were already doing some breakfast program in schools. So they said, okay, why don't we are already giving milk? The government was giving a glass of milk. They said, okay, they are not drinking plain milk. Again, common sense. Our own children don't drink plain milk at home. So how can we expect government school children to drink plain milk with sugar? So they said, why don't you come up with some product which will not just enhance the taste, but will give added micronutrients. So that's when we came up with a formulation which is very similar to, say, a Horlicks or a Boost, of course, minus the sugars and things like that. So then that again gained traction. That program gained traction because it was a big welfare program. And today we feed about 30 lakh children in Telangana, Karnataka and other states with these malt and millet based products as part of the welfare programs. And every child gets it's a good breakfast as they come to school. It's not exactly a solid breakfast, but it could be a good filler until they get their midday meal. So this is where we stand. The whole idea, the foundation is simple. How do we ensure these nutraceutical products or nutritional products, can we take it to the rural areas in the low-cost model? Now, coming to the protein story, one of the biggest challenges that we had was proteins come at a cost. So if I have to increase 1 gram of protein, it costs me 5 to 6 rupees today. 1 gram, so that's a huge cost. I mean, if we have to do it for the, especially for the rural markets, if you have coming up with a low-cost thing. Now, that's where I think a lot of innovation can happen, especially in the smart protein story. Dr. Gurmeet was telling me about the huge potential that is there for rice protein in the country because of the rice, like ethanol and other products, one of the byproducts being protein. So how can we leverage this to create a protein-rich country? And how do we make brands affordable, accessible and aspirational to the rural areas? And we're working on at this point of time, we have a state-of-the-art facility here, right here in Chikbalapur, about 50 kilometers from here, where we are manufacturing nutritional products primarily to meet the needs of our school children and pregnant women. So these are all under the welfare programs of the government. But we're also working on a model where we can take these products to the rural areas. And what will go along with the products is if we're trying to see if we can create a band of really strong entrepreneurial women who can do this personal selling, because habits have to change. If there has to be more reliance on emphasis on proteins, there has to be personal selling that has to happen on ground in villages. So that's the model that we are working on, and would be very happy to see how we can take this forward, especially creating low-cost proteins. And some breakthrough in the next 1-2 years would greatly help bottom of the pyramid. So I'll close just with one thought. Yeah, the top 20-30% in the pyramid, they're able to afford the best nutritional products, and the bottom 20-30% will always be covered by the welfare programs of the government, where they cannot afford, they have to be fed, they should be under the safety net of the government. But it's the middle 30-40%, that's a huge chunk, and that's where I think we need to make it affordable, accessible and aspirational.
So thanks for summarizing it so beautifully. I think there were so many emotions which were running in my mind, right from, I think, heartbreak when you said 60 kilometers from Bangalore and 35 kgs weight, right? To humbling, to getting inspired by what the organization is doing. I wish there were more of the scientists from the morning session who are in the auditorium. At least we have it captured on YouTube, and it is going live as well to the audiences outside. But I think for the scientist world, this is the challenge that we should be addressing, right? This is one of the key challenges we should be addressing. And I think this is what sets what we need to do in the long term. So thanks a lot for that story. I think I just with taking this on, about how do we create low cost proteins. I mean, I'm just reminded of two stories, and one certainly, I mean, one is the rice bran story, right? Which was an agri-waste. And now there is rice bran oil, so there is value from that agri-waste. And more probably pertinent to smart protein, where soybean meal, which was a very low cost, I can't call it waste, there was a use for it, but it was a very low cost material coming, which has been valorized as smart protein today, right, after expressing oil. And it's becoming a high value, and so it's changing the economy of the farmers which are in the soy growing business. And I'm looking at Neetu Benji and at Sandeep, and open to whoever wants to take the question first, but I would like both of you to take that question, is do you see in your work in rural areas that there are opportunities of agri-waste, because everything has protein, right, as Manoj was mentioning. And so could agri-waste become a source of proteins? We are one of the largest agri-producing countries in the world. There must be huge amounts of protein that we are going, which could be edible, we could test for, but that becomes the program, right? But do you see that as an opportunity of models of collecting agri-waste, processing at a central facility, just like, I mean, Amul comes to mind, right, where you have collection happening at a small scale, even a farmer with one cow can participate, and then you have a processing facility close by, which then feeds into bigger networks. So open to you, Sandeep and Neetu Benji. Yeah? Sandeep, you want to go first?
I was hoping that Neetu Ben will be able to take it first, because a lot of her work is onto this theme right now, where she is working very closely with thousands of small landholder farmers, marginal farmers, where nothing should go waste is the idea. Neetu Ben, aap hain wahan? Anyway, let her join in as time, because many times I know that, connectivity, because of, right now I'm sitting in a village called Thava. It's in Taluka Netrang, in Narmada district of South Gujarat. This is tribal Gujarat. And here I have been associated, I've been coming to this place for almost more than 2 decades now. I used to work very closely with Navsari Agriculture University, one breeder professor, and professor who is from the breeding sciences. He must be now in his mid-70s, probably, Dr. Zavir Dhimat. I'm reminded of his pioneering work, that as a breeder, he brought about 2 drought, immune rice varieties called GR5 and GR8. And that is how he went about, and contributing to more than 50% of Gujarat today eats his 2 contributing. He showed me, that highest source of protein in this area, in South Gujarat tribal Dang district and other places, is basically cow pea. Cow pea, whom what we call in Punjab as lobia, rongi, and those are the things. He showed me 23 kinds of those cow peas, 23 kinds. I couldn't believe. Showed me this long variety, which is called sword bean, and there were hardly few creepers of that left in his research farm. And there's a village called Varanasi where he was doing his researches mostly. And he said, unless we revive these 23 kinds of, and he showed me the different kinds of proteins that they contribute to in human diet. And they said, ye sabko leke aana padega. Kaise? So today, very luckily, when we are talking like this, himself, Neetu Benji, myself, and there is one more person who is from Karnataka, where I live, originally from Dharwad. Close by there is Haveri, Kashinathji. He is not on this call, but then we 4 have formed a new company dedicated to high protein seed production and sales out of the indigenous seed banks that we do. That's part 1 of the story. The passion has run into trying to make it commercialized. Why? Because we believe that the Seed Act of the country allows all the tribal families who have been safeguarding all these high proteinous seeds for centuries need to be given spaces into PPFENRA, which is a central government system of acknowledging that yes, this is your royalty, your patent or your copyright. It is your propriety, and you should be given part of the whole commercialized process of these seeds. That's part 1 that we believe should be done. It's not a very low-hanging fruit, but it's nonetheless a very huge market that we are talking about here. How huge? Right now, the vegetable seeds market in the country is about 15,000 crores. Karnataka farmers alone from one district, Haveri, must be contributing close to 11 to 12,000 crores out of it. So I personally believe it's a set of skills which needs to be transferred for farmers, producer companies, members to be attending to this market, because this market is going to grow only. Looking upward, the best part today is that the consumer segment, even in the lower middle class families, also is getting educated, knowledgeable about courtesy, the IT connectivity and all of it. They know that what we are eating is not very safe. We must shift our food base to some safe food mechanisms. They ask for these desi indigenous seed varieties to either grow in their own kitchen gardens, or whether they want such crops which they will be able to, they consider it to be safe, high protein diets and things like this. That's part of the story is happening there in the market. India is not behind. India is very much in the forefront. So I would say it is low hanging primarily because of the size of the market, number one. Number two, because we are the largest, second largest vegetable growing country in the world. Number third, these skills are very indigenous. The farming lot, particularly, I personally am very indebted to the tribal communities of our country who have safeguarded more than 19,000 edible varieties of high protein seeds for all of us, for the whole world, I would say. So we have the might, we have the means, and we have the mandate, I would say, self-appointed mandate. All the three things are there with us. And there's a huge market for this. Why not attempt it? That's question number one. So we have come out in the open by forming a specialized indigenous seed breeding company called Sajivan Seed Venture Private Limited, where a certain very high substantial percentage of stakeholding is given to FPCs, so that whatever they grow, not only they get good prices out of buyers, also out of the profits also they should be getting a lot of dividends, to be understanding that this is how Amul also operates and this is how we'll also do it. That's one part. Second, I would say, if you look at the whole global consumption pattern today, Asia, Africa and South America, these three continents have the highest population percentage or the numbers which are agri-dependent. Thankfully, these three places, all the agroclimatic systems that you add together, majority of it have been addressed in India alone, in our country alone, because we have 63 agroecological sub-regions. So we understand a lot of climatological diversity, a lot of agriculture diversity. So the knowledge, and together all these three continents, we have a lot of collaborative researches also going on for decades now. So what does it amount to? It amounts to a very good opportunity. India already exports a lot of seeds to Africa and South America. Not only with that, can we not give them knowledgeable experts also to be working in the same countries? Like today, this year, the story of mango is going to be very different. Many of us know that this year in India, we'll be eating mangoes throughout the country. Why? Because from September till next February, a lot of mangoes are going to be coming from Malawi. Malawi is an African country. But what happened? What happened was that majority of Gujarat, Maharashtra and Karnataka people who understood that Malawi offers a very good agroclimate for growing Kesar and Alfonso mangoes, about 5 years ago, they started growing that there. So at a very reasonable prices, this year you will all be seeing that from September, Malawi mangoes, Malawi Alfonso and Malawi Kesars will be made available to this country. Similarly, a lot of things will be made available to those countries. Country of ours is actually taking shape, and we are all going to be part of this whole global success story. So why not organize it better and look at many more such opportunities across?
Thank you, Sandeep. नीतू बहन जी, are you there?
जी सर जी.
हाँ जी. नहीं, अभी जैसे संदीप ने बोला कि आपका जो विजन, आपका जो गोल, व्हाट यू आर वर्किंग टुवर्ड्स इज कि जीरो वेस्ट, है ना, नथिंग शुड गो वेस्ट, एज ही सेड, राइट? आपका तो जो वेस्ट है आज का, उसमें से हम प्रोटीन निकाल सकते हैं. ऐसे कलेक्टिव एग्री वेस्ट कलेक्टिव्स शुरू हो सकते हैं कि इकट्ठा करके और प्रोटीन की तरफ देख सकते हैं. उनको कुछ ऐसा आइडिया बनता है क्या, आपके दिमाग में आता है या कुछ?
सर मुझे क्वेश्चन नहीं समझ में आ रहा. मतलब वेस्ट में से प्रोटीन, बायोमास वेस्ट की बात कर रहे हो?
मतलब जैसे कि राइस ब्रांड देखा जाए तो एक टाइम पे जो मिल में से निकल रहा है वो वेस्ट होता था, अभी उसमें से तेल निकलता है और हम सब लोग राइस ब्रांड ऑयल खाते हैं. तो उसी
जी।
तरह सोयाबीन का जो तेल निकालने के बाद मील पहले गाय को खिलाते थे या जो भी एनिमल फीड के लिए जाता था, आज उसमें से प्रोटीन निकल रहा है। तो
जी जी।
अगर
तो
हमारे
ऐसा
को
ऐसा तो काफी सारा, जैसे मूंगफली के छिलके निकलते हैं सर, तिल के जो ऑयल्स वाले जो प्रोडक्ट्स होते हैं उनका जो खड़ी खली निकलता है, उसमें से काफी सारा प्रोटीन निकलता है इसमें।
या तो आप किसी ऐसी चीज में प्रोटीन के लिए ना हो पर कोई एग्री वेस्ट इकट्ठा करने के लिए, फार्म का वेस्ट वगैरह, आप क्या देखती हैं? जीरो वेस्ट जब आप सोचती हैं तो आप क्या करती हैं वेस्ट का? क्या क्या करती हैं?
नहीं
आप,
बस
हाँ जी।
हम बायोमास वेस्ट को सिर्फ ज्यादातर एग्रीकल्चर के लिए और मिट्टी के लिए देखते हैं।
आज खाद के लिए देख रहे हैं, ऑर्गेनिक।
अच्छा, Nituben is being modest about her work. Let me share because I know it very closely and उनके काम की जो महत्ता है वो हो सकता है उतने सारे शब्दों में नहीं समझा रहे हैं, मैं बताना चाहूंगा। नीतू बहन और मैं, हम जिस फार्मिंग स्कूल से आते हैं, मेथोडोलॉजी स्कूल से आते हैं, वहां पे वी प्रिपेयर सम वेरी हाई ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन परसेंटेज सॉइल कॉल्ड अमृत मिट्टी। ओके, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इफ यू लुक एट दिस होल प्रोटीन स्टोरी, you will have to understand that everything, the genesis lies in the quality of soil where you have to grow the thing. आपकी कोई भी फसल में, any of the things that you are growing, if there is not enough organic carbon in the soil, तो वो अच्छे से नहीं उगने वाली। तो अमृत मिट्टी जो बनती है उसमें हम लोगों का ये दावा है, जो उन्होंने पहले भी बोला आपको, 140 दिनों में हम वो सॉइल बना देते हैं। हमारे पास, दोनों के पास अभी भी काफी रिकॉर्डेड स्टेटमेंट्स है पिछले 15 सालों की सॉइल टेस्टिंग रिजल्ट्स हैं, जिसमें 8.5% ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन भी सॉइल में देखा गया है। एंड बिरसा मुंडा एग्रीकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटी रांची, बिरसा एग्रीकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटी रांची वाज द फर्स्ट यूनिवर्सिटी टू बी एसोसिएटिंग विद अस, एंड दे वर फीलिंग लॉट ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस ऑन वन साइड, ऑन द अदर साइड दे वर वेरी सरप्राइज्ड कि 140 दिनों में ऐसा क्या होगा कि जहां पे सॉइल कार्बन लेस देन 0.5% था, वहां पे हमने 8.5% पैदा कर दिया। ये जो वेस्ट टू वेल्थ स्टोरी है उसमें मिट्टी का बड़ा रोल है। तो नीतू बहन जी का जो सारा काम है उसमें वो सारा बायोमास जिसको हम वेस्ट सोच रहे हैं, हम सोच रहे हैं उससे कैसे बनेगा, उसको अभी हम लोग कन्वर्ट कर रहे हैं हाई प्रोडक्टिव सॉइल में। ये मिट्टी के जो एंजाइम्स है, माइक्रोबियल एक्टिविटी है, कम नहीं होती। इसको जब आप ऐड करते हैं तो ओवरऑल ये बढ़ता जाता है, हर साल वो सॉइल प्रोडक्टिविटी को ऐड करता जाता है। कैसे ऐड करता है? क्योंकि वो मल्टीप्लाई करता है, उसमें माइक्रोबियल एक्टिविटी घटती नहीं, बढ़ती रहती है। ये पार्ट वन ऑफ द स्टोरी है ना, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, अगर आप देखेंगे तो इसकी वजह से वहां हम थोड़ी सी जगह पे भी, थोड़े से सॉइल के ऊपर भी बहुत हाई प्रोडक्टिविटी वाली क्रॉप्स ले सकते हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, और ये आज 1 साल की बात नहीं बता रहा हूँ, आप सभी लोग का स्वागत है। अगर किसी एक फार्म पे देखना चाहते हैं तो वापी, दमन के आगे वापी, महाराष्ट्र में जो जगह है, वापी से आगे उम्बरगांव एक जगह है, वहां पे भारत के बहुत सबसे बड़ी उम्र वाले व्यक्ति भास्कर भाई सावे जी का फार्म है, सावे फार्म के नाम से। वहां पे आपको 20 से ज्यादा नारियल के पेड़ दिखाई देंगे। आई विश ऑल ऑफ यू शुड बी एबल टू विजिट इट बिकॉज वी ऑल लर्न देयर। नीतू बहन जी, मैं, हम सब लोगों ने वहां जाके सीखा, बहुत साल लगाए, बहुत साल पहले शुरू हुआ था ये काम। वहां हर कोकोनट ट्री, एवरी कोकोनट ट्री yields not less than 400 coconuts every year, more than 20 trees, and since more than 40 years it has been happening, which means it's a science. So if you look at how, and they never pluck any of the coconuts themselves. They earn out of 20 acres. About 10 years ago, they used to earn more than ₹1 crore because they never calculated in terms of money. They always calculated in terms of organic percentage of the soil, whatever is happening there. Their farm was always 1.5 meters higher than the normal farms in that area because so much biomass has gone into contributing to the soil fertility there that soil fertility in the first 2, 3, 4 years ultimately started adding to the productivity part of it and the canopy part of it, the tree and all that. So the science that we practice NatuEco, very simple. It is basically science of networking sunlight with the canopy. It's mathematical in nature and the root system of a tree or a plant. That's a simple part. But then such intriguing, nice thing has happened about 50 years ago in our country and hardly anyone knows about it. Leave aside acknowledging that it exists and all that. We don't even know, we don't even care that it's a Desi science, and Dr. Dabholkar sitting in Kolhapur is a mathematician. He evolved it. I feel very sad at times that I couldn't in my life meet him. He passed away in 2001. But then all of us are practicing that and we believe that this is the best out of the waste that we are talking here. All shells. Just to give you an example, Neetu Benji will also agree to that. Recently we have come out with a very small, high calorie, high proteinous formula of bhajis. 7 different kinds of leaves are brought here. I'm not going to talk at length about it because it's our formula. But then one thing we found out of our experiments was that cabbage में जो नीचे, you have these three behind cabbage, you have these three backbones kind of things. They are very high, very rich in calcium. And most of the APMCs where vegetables come early in the morning for this thing, people are just chopping it down, throwing it as a waste, and without acknowledging, without knowing that it is very rich in calcium, edible calcium, and we can bring it back to our food systems. So what we are preparing right now is a very small 12-gram kind of a dosage for lactating women, for pregnant sisters of ours in the country. 3 months, our data shows us last trimester of a pregnancy, if this 12 grams is given to every woman, their children have a very high immunity. And this is available, this study is available from Dharavi slums. This study took place between 2004 to 2014. It was sponsored by British High Commission to Mumbai Municipal Corporation, and more than 1,000 women, 500 control group, 500 who were given this supplement. That data showed that this is required. So we took it up. We said, okay, why not do it? Why not do it together and create a protein product out of it as a nutraceutical product, and why not offer it at a very, very low cost to the whole thing, which means wastages like of the cabbage, niche wala portion and all of it can be taken care, and we can do that. So I think amazing things are happening. We need to have more time to make you presentations and how things went in, and why we believe these are going to be the future, very near future products from our company.
So thanks, Sandeep. You have a few things to say.
Adding on to what Sandeep ji is saying, I think it's a very important point that he is bringing out. One thing is about reviving the soil and going back to our roots, but how these products, these are raw materials, I would say raw crops. So how can we get these products, do some value addition, and get back these products to the rural areas again as value added products? Just to give you an example, when we in Telangana we started this program where we were doing a small pilot of giving millets of ragi flour and with jaggery, and that pilot was successful, and the government wanted us to extend it to the entire 23 lakh children, and now we have started that program of giving fortified ragi with cinnamon, pepper and with jaggery to 23 lakh children. Now, the moment this happened, I think Sandeep ji would be of interest to him. What happened? A group of farmer producer organization in Karnataka who were growing ragi very organically. A person came forward and said, you know what, this is going back to the children. This is going to the children in government schools. We cannot afford to give chemical laden ragi to those children. I will take up, my FPO will take up the responsibility of growing ragi organically, and he got 750 of those farmers to our place, and they offered the ragi seeds before sowing, which was about 1 month back at the Divine, and they said, let there be bountiful crops so that this ragi goes back to the children in government schools. So in the process, what is happening? The farmer is growing. We are doing a little bit of value addition by adding cinnamon, pepper, and mixing it and making it to a nice product, and it's going back to the children. So in this whole there's so much of value creation happening. So there is a huge opportunity for us to do value-added products and make it aspirational. So I think that's the way we should look at even research contributing to this, and then looking at how we can market it.
Yeah.
So I would end with these thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think beautiful thoughts, and what Sandeep said, what Neetu Benji is working on, and what you said, I think the connections are very organic themselves, right? I mean, connecting the soil, I mean, the sun with the canopy, with the soil, with the growth, and all the way up to aspiration. And so I think if we build the rudimentary models and blocks are in place, we need to connect them and scale them, and that can be transformational. But they certainly seed a lot of ideas for us academics to work on and focus on.
Science.
Right, science, right, to work collaboratively. And I am hoping that many of these ideas, then our industry panel that was there earlier, that they almost picked this up, and that can be truly transformative, right? So thanks a lot, Sandeep, thanks a lot, Neetu, Benji, and thanks a lot, Bernie, and sorry that this session got a little delayed, right? And
No problem, sir.
but thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, yeah, for joining, and thanks to Shovan
Thank you,
for setting
Manoj.
this
And we got some
panel
very
up.
beautiful insights from the session ourselves. And we look forward to collaborating with TDU for many of these new generational aspirational, enterprises.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. धन्यवाद नीतन जी. Yeah.
जी
Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. I think was truly learning for. It was a great learning for me being on the stage and listening to all the replies. We had a few questions. The questions. Thank you to everyone who sent in the questions as well. And I hope you had a chance to go around and see the campus a little bit, see our pilot plant, taste some foods. But thank you. Yeah. See you. We call this session close.